There comes a moment in many people's lives when suffering feels endless. Problems repeat, relationships fail, anxiety returns, and the mind whispers that nothing will ever change. Buddhism does not deny suffering. In fact, the Buddha began his teaching by recognizing it. Yet he also taught that suffering has causes, and anything that has causes can come to an end. What many people do not realize is that the end of suffering often begins quietly. It does not arrive with fireworks or dramatic miracles. It begins with subtle changes in the mind, in perception, and in the way a person responds to life. According to Buddhist wisdom, there are signs that indicate a person is moving away from attachment. Ignorance and craving, the very forces that keep suffering alive. The first sign is that you no longer react to everything immediately. In the past, a criticism might have ruined your entire day. A rude comment, a rejection, or an unexpected problem could trigger anger, fear, or despair. Now there is a small space between the event and your reaction. You notice the emotion, but you do not become completely controlled by it. This pause is extremely important in Buddhism. The Buddha taught that suffering grows when we react blindly. When awareness enters the moment, the chain of suffering weakens. If you have started observing your emotions instead of instantly obeying them, your suffering may already be losing its power. The second sign is that your desires feel less urgent. You may still want success, comfort, or recognition, but they no longer seem like matters of life and death. Many people believe happiness will finally arrive when they obtain the next thing, more money, a better relationship, a larger house, or greater status. The Buddha called this endless craving a trap. The mind keeps saying, just one more thing, and then I will be happy. But satisfaction quickly fades, and a new desire appears. When suffering begins to end, desires become lighter. You can enjoy good things without believing that your entire happiness depends on them. The third sign is that you start appreciating ordinary moments. A simple meal, a quiet evening, the sound of rain, or a conversation with someone you love begins to feel meaningful. This may seem insignificant, but it represents a profound transformation. The restless mind constantly searches for extraordinary experiences because it cannot rest in the present. The awakened mind discovers richness in what is already here. Buddhist practice trains attention to return to the present moment. When ordinary life becomes enough, suffering loses one of its strongest foundations. The fourth sign is that resentment begins to fade. You may remember the people who hurt you, but the burning need for revenge becomes weaker. Holding on to hatred feels heavy. The Buddha compared resentment to carrying a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. The person who carries it gets burned first. Forgiveness in Buddhism does not mean approving harmful actions. It means refusing to let the past continue poisoning the present. If you notice that old grudges no longer dominate your thoughts, it is a powerful indication that healing is occurring. The fifth sign is that solitude becomes less frightening. Many people avoid silence because silence exposes the mind. Without distractions, unresolved fears and worries become visible. But as suffering decreases, being alone no longer feels empty. You begin to experience solitude as peace rather than loneliness. This is why meditation is so central in Buddhism. Sitting quietly with yourself allows the mind to settle. When you can be alone without needing constant entertainment, approval, or distraction, it shows that inner stability is growing. The sixth sign is perhaps the most surprising: you become more compassionate toward others. When people are deeply trapped in their own suffering, they often become absorbed in themselves. Every problem feels personal and overwhelming. But as the mind becomes clearer, it naturally notices the struggles of others. Compassion is not forced, it arises spontaneously. You start responding with patience instead of judgment. The Buddha taught that wisdom and compassion grow together. A person whose suffering is ending does not become cold or detached, they become more capable of understanding others. Many people expect spiritual progress to feel dramatic, but Buddhism describes it differently. Imagine a lake after a storm. At first the water is turbulent, and nothing can be seen clearly. As the wind weakens, the surface gradually becomes calm. The lake does not suddenly transform, it settles. The mind works the same way. When craving, anger, and ignorance begin to weaken, clarity appears naturally. You may not notice the change day by day, but over time you realize that situations that once overwhelmed you no longer have the same power. The Buddha also warned that suffering can return if mindfulness is abandoned. These signs are not a reason for pride. They are reminders to continue practicing awareness. Even someone who has made great progress can become trapped again by attachment and fear. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes consistency rather than perfection. A few moments of genuine awareness each day can gradually transform an entire life. Consider how many people spend years searching for external solutions to an internal problem. They change jobs, relationships, cities, and possessions, yet the same dissatisfaction follows them. Buddhism does not reject external improvements, but it points out that suffering originates primarily in the mind's relationship to experience. When that relationship changes, the world itself begins to feel different. The same life can be experienced either as a prison or as a path to freedom. Another subtle sign is that uncertainty becomes more tolerable. The future is never fully predictable. People suffer because they desperately want guarantees. They want certainty about health, money, relationships, and success. The Buddha taught that impermanence is unavoidable. Everything changes. When suffering starts to end, you stop fighting this reality so intensely. You still plan and make responsible choices, but you no longer demand absolute control over life. This acceptance creates tremendous peace. You may also notice that comparison loses some of its grip. Social status, achievements, and other people's opinions become less important than they once were. Comparison is a major source of suffering because it convinces us that our worth depends on being better than someone else. Buddhism challenges this idea completely. True peace does not come from winning a competition, it comes from understanding the nature of the mind. When comparison weakens, a huge burden disappears. Perhaps the deepest sign of all is that you begin to trust the present moment. Not because the present is always pleasant, but because you understand that resisting reality creates additional suffering. The Buddha did not promise a life without pain. Illness, loss, aging, and death remain part of human existence. What changes is the way we meet them. A mind trained in awareness experiences pain without adding unnecessary layers of fear. Resentment and resistance, if several of these signs are appearing in your life, even in small ways, do not dismiss them. They may indicate that your suffering is already beginning to dissolve. The process is often gradual and almost invisible, like dawn slowly replacing darkness. The Buddha's teaching is not merely a philosophy to admire, it is a practical path that transforms how we experience every moment. The end of suffering does not arrive from outside. It emerges from within, through awareness, understanding, and the gradual release of attachment. And sometimes the clearest evidence that it is happening is not that life has become perfect, but that your mind has become lighter, calmer, and less afraid than it was before. So if you find yourself reacting less, craving less, appreciating simple things, forgiving more easily, enjoying silence, and feeling compassion for others, take a moment to recognize what is happening. According to Buddhist wisdom, these are not random changes. They are signs that the storm inside the mind is beginning to settle. Your suffering may not be completely gone, but the path toward its end has already begun.